Power is returning after what distributors called a total system collapse earlier after a fire in a transmission line in Niger State. The blackout lasted nearly 10 hours and affected all 36 states, including Abuja. Great power supply can be erratic in Nigeria, forcing homes and businesses to rely on diesel and petrol generators to keep the lights on. But the sharp rise in energy prices after the removal of subsidies has now left many households and companies struggling to find alternative sources of power.
Right, so the question is there a way out of Nigeria's lingering power crisis? Let's bring in Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, I'm sure, many Nigerians listening and hearing that after 10 hours of power is back, some would say, look, I don't have power yet. I doubt very much if I have power back at home. But just 400 weeks ago, the federal government celebrated the fact that 400 days, right? Without grid collapse. And now here we are again. Well, we're told by the Minister of Power that fire outbreak was responsible for this. But are there fundamental questions that we need to address on this, power grid situation?
Well, last year we had about 6 to 9 complete power collapse, grid collapse, blackout, total, absolute. And now we say we have 400 days of no collapse. It doesn't mean 400 days of reliable power supply. So
right.
That 400 days they didn't have a total blackout, which is actually rare in a country. Are there real underlying issues? Of course. And people have asked me, and I said, look, I don't like to discuss about power because it makes you very distressed. I mean, people ask me, are we going to solve this problem? I said, it doesn't look very feasible in the near future that we're going to exit, because it's about comprehensive frailty in the distribution.
Comprehensive what?
Frailty. It's
okay.
frail.
Right.
We are a frail and vulnerable network, And they say it's fire. Next time it could be some kind of sabotage. It could be the network collapse itself. So there's weakness in the network. And then to really get to a point where we don't even imagine a system collapse, we have to really, strengthen the distribution network. First, TCN makes some claim as to have ramped up the transmission capability, but again, it's still insufficient. And so we see this frailty. You see, the problem is this: when you unbundle, one of the crises we get from literature of power sector reform is that unbundling, which is what we have, further increases the coordination problem. So if you unbundle, you have to be very smart, digitize, able to track, prevent, troubleshoot. So, but unbundling makes it much more difficult to manage a network. What that means that you can have the DisCos and their own TCN. Many people have argued also that maybe we need to further unbundle the transmission network. Maybe have a lot more regionalized grid, maybe have more stability. Now, oftentimes the collapse, the TCN will tell that DisCos cause it, maybe the network is frail, and therefore they kind of outsource or transmit frailty into the network. I mean, if they send load and they can't pick load, and that constitutes a problem. Or the DisCos will say, well, the TCN cannot get the load where we need it.
The blame game.
So I think it's really a signal that, look, we've not, in the last 8 years, I must say, the body government did not really pay attention to actually, deepening the strengthening of the network. So we did a lot of politicizing. That's why in 2022 we had persistent collapses. We have the Siemens project that supposed to bring in, reinforce and provide more support to both the transmission network and distribution network. But the ramping up, signing off on these deals, the problem is that you're going to lay this superstructure on very weak infrastructure, one. Two, even when you're going to try to deal with the infrastructure, maybe insufficient relaying of network. So those weak parts over time kind of undermines the effectiveness of the improvement. So we probably need to be more holistic. We probably need to also have some patience and some confession that we are really going to have this challenge for some time. And then depoliticize the process and then look deeper into some of the adaptive challenges we face in the sector. You're going to have to talk about TCN probably that's still dealing with manual networks. Right. They don't have the SCADA system optimized to really manage the whole network in Nigeria, because when you unbundle, you have to be sophisticated, both in technology and the human competence to really, stop those collapses and failures. So, frailty is going to remain. But then the question is, can we ramp up competence and reduce it not just 500 days, but of course improve the capacity of the DisCos to take in more power, improve the capacity of the TCN to take in, and then maintain high level frequency and modulation control, so that the network not just is collapses, but you see minor collapse here and there, and a lot of volatility. Yeah.
Well, very well. Let me take you back to having regional grids and plants. The president had promised to allow states to build their own power plants.
The law now allows it.
To spur economic growth. Yeah. So, talk to us about the possibility of this helping reduce this kind of experience.
It also depends on implementation. You see, the legal framework sounds good, but we have to put it side by side with the economics of it, with the regulatory framework and technical issues around it. So, for example, states are now coming up with electricity acts, laws, setting up agencies, but that's not the point. I mean, the point is, first, the act says that these DisCos remain, okay? So if you're going to have them, how are you going to ensure that these DisCos and the new framework integrate? So the risk we're going to run now with the new act is that we're going to see that we've built on a lot of incoherences. So you have a structure that underlying it is not aligning. So the state set up electricity company. It doesn't have a DisCo itself. It can't have a DisCo because it doesn't have the scale and the financing. And then there's a contract that Abuja DisCo has, Ibadan has, Enugu has, Yola have. So those companies have contracts that and authorization that allow them to distribute power across
rather than states. Let me come. Rather than just states, what about regions like Southwest, North, Southeast?
They can do a lot.
What about that cooperation?
Yeah,
can that help?
It can work, but then you have to really integrate everything. So yes, region can have the scale to get it done, but they have to see how do you align the old, which is that there are DisCos on ground that have authorizations to operate across regions. So it helps. For example, Lagos have 2 DisCos. Okay, you have to find a way to, if you're going to do Southwest, you're going to get Lagos and others. So you have to find a way to create a seamless integration, a commercial framework, a regulatory framework that aligns. The problem with power is you need high-level alignment across regulatory, legal, structural, commercial lineup, so that everything lines up well. Because it's not enough to say, okay, we're going to have power plant. We're going to borrow money, buy the power plant, set up. The other issues around commerciality, around technical delivery, efficiency, and also that the investors who come in will see that all these things, all the risks, are the risk. So yes, we can do that, but we need to do more than just paperwork. We need to do more than just flipping pages of constitution and decrees. No, we need to sit back and get the people to think through how do you relay a new electricity network, both in terms of commercial regulatory issues around this new.
All right, very quickly, we heard the president there say, look, Nigerians have no reason to be poor, but you have about over 80 million Nigerians don't have access to electricity, and there's a nexus definitely between access to power and poverty. But there's the question of the search for alternative power sources. Let's talk about that. What are the alternatives that a country like Nigeria can begin to look at?
Alternatives exist. We have the renewables available. There's new renewable policy, NEC has feed-in tariffs. So presumably, the legal framework for alternatives are available. But don't forget, look at this. We have zero renewable energy in the grid. You see, we talk about nobody should be poor. Of course, we have no reason to be poor, but we're going to be poor because we don't do what we need to get out of poverty. So renewables are going to be great ideas, and we can transition to them. But then you can't outsource the work of good modeling and good implementation. We need to crowd in renewable, but don't forget that even countries like South Africa that started ahead of us with a real plan are still phasing them in gradually. Renewable now cannot constitute a load base for a country like Nigeria that has industrialization dream. You have to optimize gas resource to power, then roll in renewable, phase them in gradually when they become available. Yes, technology is increasing, cost is going low on renewable, but again, we cannot build the Nigeria industrial plan. We cannot build household and business requirement of power on renewable as is today. We have to be strategic to phase them in quickly as we can, but the hope for now relies on optimizing the conventional gas supply and other hydro and others.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sam Amadi, for your insight tonight on Newsnight. Former Chairman, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC.